Good morning. Welcome to the latest episode of the Bitcoin Morning Brief. We are here with Giacomo Zucco and Tone Bays, the CEO of BHB Network. Giacomo, thanks for coming on the show. How's everything going?
Thank you for inviting me. Everything is fine. It's lunchtime here in Switzerland, but we do not have so.
Tone, how's everything?
Good. I haven't even looked at the prices last night. I know I did a price show, a lot of Q&A last night, really good show. So check that out from last night.
Awesome. All right. Another attempt at remittances. Let's talk about what's going on. Here we go. All right. Major South Korean exchange Bithumb partners with BitPay to corner 200 billion market. Bithumb, South Korea's largest cryptocurrency exchange with an average daily trading volume of about 380 million, has partnered with BitPay to enter the global remittance market. The partnership will enable businesses in that region to issue invoices in Bitcoin and get settled through BitPay, a Bitcoin payment processing service, as we very well know. So the difference here is that in the interim national remittance market, you'll be able to convert and settle in Bitcoin and can be paid by anyone using BitPay. So it's been a lot of attempts in the past about remittances. Tone, can this group pull it off without being hacked and having issues?
Like, this is, I'm actually finding this very, very comical. Like, when we're deciding whether to do this story or not. This is yet another attempt at remittance. I think for the last 3 years, all we talked about is how remittance with crypto is like one of the silliest things you can do. Everyone continues to try it, and everyone continues to fail. I haven't seen a single success. Look, even Circle has just pivoted from remittance, which they talked about for 3 years, with a lot of backing, and now they're becoming an altcoin exchange. So what does that tell you? So this one is particularly funny because normally you do remittance in like countries like the Philippines and the others. You have two companies here that I know, Bithumb, just a few months ago, the rate of Bitcoin in Korea was like 10% above the rate of Bitcoin everywhere else. So like, okay, so how is that going to save you money on remittance? Because you have to go in and out of Bitcoin on both ends. It's just absolutely hilarious. What do you think, Giacomo? I think this is like probably one of the silliest things I've heard all year. Well, yeah, no, like, okay, let me not go that far. I'm sorry. At least they're using Bitcoin. Like, as far as like Bitcoin only stories, maybe.
Yeah, for now, because when BitPay is involved, you never know if some shady altcoin is going to show up soon. Anyway, I agree with you. Remittance with Bitcoin itself is dubious as a business model. But the main problem is that you don't need a startup or a company to do that. You just need two people, one in the USA, one in the Philippines, with a Bitcoin wallet. Bitcoin is already enough for remittance if needed and when needed. Of course, your doubt about the market rate in South Korea is actually legit. And also, it's particularly funny that they are partnering up with BitPay to do this. So they want to save they want to attack a market that right now is crippled by 4% fees. And actually, they're using BitPay, which just recently, a few days ago, started to ask 33% fees over Bitcoin payments, framing it as a network fee. Actually, it was just subsidized for their bad batching and bad Bitcoin policies. So there is still a screenshot going around on Twitter. The screenshot says that BitPay is charging 0% of network fee if you use Bcash, and 33% of network fees.
33 or like
33. Yeah, you can still find if you look. Yeah, because
I thought you meant 3%.
No, 33, and they want to attack a market with. Of course, it doesn't make any sense because Bitcoin payments are not even percentage fees. So they just try to promote Bcash with this fake promotion of the fees. They talk about network fees, but actually network fees are not paid by BitPay. They're paid by the user that spends Bitcoin. So all these things doesn't make any sense. Also, it's funny that BitPay is actually one of the worst. So another reason to do remittance with Bitcoin eventually, possibly, is that we will have a standardization and interoperability. While BitPay is the only payment processor that actually destroyed any kind of interoperability, modifying the BIP70 standard. So there is a standard for payment protocol. They modified it, adding a required fees field, which is not compatible, and so nobody is actually properly using BitPay right now. So this news is really comical over different layers.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's going to be many issues here potentially. Let's move on to a startup attempting to be disruptive with, again, more of a Bitcoin focus. So UK-based Coinfloor to launch physically settled Bitcoin futures. So cryptocurrency exchange operator Coinfloor said on Wednesday that it's going to launch futures exchange for digital assets that will include the first physically delivered Bitcoin futures contracts next month. I think that this is bad because it means that instead of just cash going from person to person, now people have to sell real Bitcoin, and therefore it could put downward pressure on Bitcoin prices. The way CME and CBOE are set up is that it's simply paper transactions and it's settled in cash. But here, you have to sell your Bitcoin to fulfill the contract. This means that someone with a lot of Bitcoin, hedge fund or a whale, can force the price up and down by shorting or short squeezing. Tone, do you think that this is a big issue or not, given that they are small? And does this make it any difference than what is already happening?
I'm going to say something quick, then I'll hand it off to Giacomo to talk about Bitcoin security angle of it. Now, here's the thing, right? Like the reason why this story is almost irrelevant to me is because Coinfloor is not relevant in the traditional finance space. Like it doesn't matter what they think. I mean, we almost have like physical delivered futures, right? Because BitMax does it, and a couple of other exchanges within crypto do it, right? Now, these guys think that the CME doesn't know what they're doing, and they're going to bring physically delivering futures to the traditional financial markets. And but who are they? Like, where are they going to get the regulatory clearance? That's the question. And there is a reason why CME didn't go for the physically delivered futures. My best guess is because Bitcoin security is very, very difficult. And Giacomo, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Bitcoin security is what I'm focusing more on in the last, let's say, months, mainly with Switzerland banks, Swiss-based banks, and it's very difficult. Like in traditional markets, you have providers that have to secure physical gold, for example, which is very easy to steal and to make disappear. Maybe physical gold coins, but at least they are pretty much stable as a market price, at least when slippage and transfer is concerned. Then they also have to manage very, very exotic and very, very volatile financial derivatives and exotic stuff. But then at least there you don't have any kind of physical security needed at all, because you cannot steal a financial derivative from a bank caveau. So Bitcoin is like the worst of two worlds. You have a lot of trade-offs between, on one side, usability of the standards you use by the employees of the bank or of the future company, and on the other side, real security. Like if you do a complex multi-sig scheme based on hardware wallets with check load time verify, that's probably very effective, but no bank employee or no traditional finance employee is really able to adopt that kind of standard. So it's a hard problem, not easy to solve. I think that one of the problems we are witnessing is that many traditional institutions are just outsourcing the Bitcoin security to little centralized startups, which is very, very bad. I mean, if you imagine several Swiss banks or UK-based future markets outsourcing the Bitcoin security, which is a very, very hard problem, to some Bitcoin exchange, which is already a single point of failure, or to some Bitcoin startup which is not regulated, not insured, and often it doesn't have the internal security policies that a typical security-oriented company has. It's a very hard problem. I think that it's interesting to see how can they start to deal with it. In general, I think that financial firms that start to use their traditional financial tools to leverage blockchain-based assets, so Bitcoin, is more interesting than financial firms that try to use blockchain-ish, crypto-sounding tools in order to manage traditional assets. So basically, it's better to have a company which is doing a traditional future on Bitcoin than to have a company which is doing blockchain-based futures over oil or other commodities. So,
all right. Well, let me just pull this one quote that I found interesting. Again, many proprietary trading firms and large investors have voiced concerns that the cash-settled process can be manipulated too easily, as bad actors can attempt to move the price of the indexes or auctions on spot exchanges that set the futures prices in their favor, Lamb said. So, Tone, can you just comment a bit on this?
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. Actually, like I would love to hear him. I would love to have this attributed to actually who said that, and I would like for them to show some evidence of that. It really sounds like this. This just shows you how amateurish the entire crypto space is. You can't make blanket statements like that in traditional finance without any kind of proof, because you're accusing, you're trying to accuse manipulation. This is like the conspiracy theory stuff. So basically, you're trying to make your little company relevant, and you're trying to bring your company to the traditional financial markets by blanketly just stating something random that helps your business of physical delivery, which you may or may not be actually competent at. So I actually don't like it when this is done, because there's no proof of this. And not to mention, if this little company brings physical delivery, how do you know your physical delivery contracts are not going to be manipulated to shreds once they're out there in the open market? Like I just don't like reading things like that. Like someone like me can speculate and throw out wild accusations, because I'm not actually trying to form a company to capitalize on it. I'm speculating. That's my job as an analyst. But if you guys are going to bring this to the floor, literally, your company is called Coinfloor, if you're going to bring physical delivery futures and you make a statement like that, you better back it up with some evidence.
Right. Well, hopefully they won't add altcoins. And on to another country with a tech project. Here we go. Huawei is building tech that can stress test blockchains. So Huawei unveiled a tool called Project Caliper, designed to test the performance of major blockchains. Huao Junju, the Huawei engineer behind the vast majority of the code, described the tool as one that, while focused on analyzing technology, is fundamentally about helping developers and corporates make more confident decisions about the tech. So Giacomo, what do you think that Huawei's greater corporate strategy is here?
I think hype and tech-sounding marketing, just like the creation of Hyperledger consortium itself. It was just a big marketing operation before from Digital Asset Holdings, and now mainly by IBM, by basically IBM. So the thing is that they are talking about testing the major blockchain platforms, while they aren't. The major blockchain platform is the Bitcoin protocol. This is like somebody in 1994 trying to test the major packet switching based network, completely ignoring the internet protocol, which is the only relevant one. Hyperledger is mostly a marketing operation leveraged by IBM. There are no clear specification that anybody can use in production. The main use case for what they call blockchain will be an open standard for financial transaction, while actually there is no open standard, because every company inside Hyperledger is creating their own pet project, marketing-oriented standard with no interoperability whatsoever between the different flavors. Fabric is not interoperable with Sabretooth and so on. I'm sorry that all the news we are commenting today happened just to be basically scams. But I think this is clearly a typical example of what Paul Stoll called blockchain as an excuses. Basically, you want some marketing coverage. You cannot touch Bitcoin directly because that's reputationally risky or legally risky, or because you don't know how to do that. While you cannot just admit that you are clueless about what's happening with Bitcoin and around Bitcoin. So you start to do blockchain projects that 90% of the time do not need a blockchain at all. A blockchain is actually a liability for this kind of projects. And 10% of the time, they could need a blockchain for timestamping or notarization, and they will just need to use an open standard like open timestamps on top of Bitcoin. So it would be nice to see any single use case of this consortium private blockchain, which cannot be done at the exact same way with a MySQL database. There was a nice website, a nice prank website going around, circulating 2 years ago. Maybe it still exists. It was www.myblockchain.xyz. www.myblockchain.xyz. So basically, this leverages all the blockchain-based hype. It talks about all the typical blockchain buzzwords, and actually it is a MySQL instance which you can install and which is modified in order to call the tables as blocks and the records as transactions and the database as blockchain. But actually it's just MySQL, and that's what could be used with probably even better than this Hyperledger stuff, because this kind of technology, MySQL, is established, reviewed, and pretty much secure technology, while stuff like Fabric are mostly marketing fair stand stuff.
Correct. All the corporates jumping into their attempt at blockchain solutions. Tone, can you explain this chart and if you see any new developments from these other corporate attempts before?
No, I absolutely cannot explain this chart, and I'm not sure who actually could in a way that will not just have me laughing. So basically, I learned something new from this article, and as Giacomo nicely explained, I had no idea there was Fabric and Sawtooth and what else do they already have on Hyperledger? Iroha. It's like anyone can just get in there, make their own subsection of Hyperledger, and boom, all of a sudden, you're trying to get a real company to actually believe in this, nonsense. And they stuck Ethereum in there. It's just a hype chart. It's just a hype chart. There is nothing here. It's just an over-complex layer to do something. I don't even understand if they don't need any of this in there. I mean, they have a multi-billion-dollar company. Their database engineers are infinitely better than anyone working on Hyperledger at their company to bring, their cell phones through. I use their cell phone, for God's sakes. I mean, I'm sure anyway, it's just bad. Giacomo summed it up for me. I don't need to. You guys, like all the live audience, don't need to listen to me, repeat the same thing over again. Now you get another voice in there, so I'm good.
Right. All right. Let's see if this next story is also just hype. Okay. Congressional hearing on cryptocurrencies delves into Bitcoin Bash Fest. So yesterday, the House Financial Services Subcommittee met to discuss the cryptocurrency landscape. Welcome to Congress. As to be expected, there was division between the lawmakers' statements and a lot of inflammatory statements from especially Congressman Sherman, who is pictured right here, saying that, quote, cryptos are a crock, end quote. To start off his opening remarks to, as well on the other side, Representative Emmer, who was advocating for a more hands-off approach. So to me as a Washingtonian, I see this as all theater, right? Personally, the hearing highlighted how little Congress understands about the cryptocurrency industry. Many pointed fingers to this hearing as a catalyst for Bitcoin's price drop yesterday, but it's my opinion that it's actually very harmless and that we're probably at least 2 years away from any legislations. Moreover, it was only the subcommittee. So to understand DC, well, actually the Hill, The subcommittee, their opinion is considered, but they do not have the ultimate say. And it will actually be important what the committee chair, rather than the subcommittee chair, says, who is a Republican Texas congressman. His name is Jeb Hensarling. So, Tone, many of the members yesterday made some extraordinarily ignorant comments about crypto. Are you worried?
I actually am. I know you and I were talking like you know, in the green room before this show, and you're laughing about this, and I'm not. like this really bothered me. I have not actually watched the video. It's queued up. I have the NCAA tournament starts, so I'm gonna be like I'm taking the day off. I'm gonna go watch, and it takes me like an hour drive or plus to get where I'm going. So I will try to watch those hearings. But so this bothered me a lot, and like, because you have to read these comments. Like, I guess I'll read them, or if you want to, you know, Leah, why don't you read them? Your voice and ability of English is better than mine. Can you read some of those comments that are in the article that I strongly recommend everybody read?
Absolutely. Let me find my favorites.
You can just read all the quotes. They were all actually really good. Well, they were bad, but they were good to understand what the thinking process is.
Sure. Well, what I did find interesting was, quote, "We know that this has moved very quickly." Huizenga said, this Congress is not going to sit by idly with a lack of protection for investors, right? And Huizenga referenced a soon-to-be published story of the ICO market by an MIT professor, though, so not on the Hill, which estimates that 270 million to 307 million of the money raised by ICOs has likely gone to frauds or scams.
Yeah, so can I comment on that? I think that I think he's totally wrong on that 270 out of 317. I think it's more like 315 out of 317. So I will dispute that study completely. I would love to debate him on that. I think it's significantly higher than 270 going to scams and frauds.
Right.
Agreed.
So, and before I turn it over you to Giacomo, my favorite, which I just found the most absolutely ignorant, was, again, back to Congressman Sherman, who said, and I believe this is up at the top, that, quote, "They are popular with guys who sit around in their pajamas and tell their wives they're going to be millionaires." So first of all, this is extraordinarily sexist, I will say, as a woman, but also simply makes no sense. So couldn't explain better how much he does not understand what's going on. So I guess if I understand you correctly here, Tone, you're worried that, I think it's up here, but I will find it, that because of their ignorance on this subject, and because of these very strong statements that they're making, that this will actually lead to, you know, potential legislation that can be harming for the industry. So as you mentioned before, but just given the inflammatory statement of this one and how ridiculous it is, you know, do you have any last comment on this?
Yeah, I do, because here's the thing, right? Like in the beginning of the article, right? Like here, like the following, Sherman had a litany of concerns, and it says Bitcoin has the ability to help terrorists, criminals, tax evaders, and startup companies looking to commit fraud. He's like, that's the thing, right? Like, they're different. They're different. Here's what bothers me, right? Well, like, and this is a struggle. Like, these guys on the Hill cannot separate ICOs and Bitcoin. They can't. They can't separate ICOs and Bitcoin. To them, it's the same thing. My problem is that I now feel that 90% of people in crypto also cannot separate ICOs and Bitcoin. To them, it's the same thing. So how do you expect Congress to separate ICOs and Bitcoin? Now, so most of the stuff I agree with. He basically, like here's another one. Sherman accused the cryptocurrency community of using the term ICO to lie to the public and convey the image that it is like an IPO. And I agree with that 100%. So what happens is, and here's the thing, 90% of these people in crypto that cannot tell a difference between ICOs and Bitcoin, these people would rather have Bitcoin die and ICOs succeed. then Bitcoin succeed and ICOs die. So what happens when when everything in the space is so misaligned that like 90%, there's a 90% chance that the expert these guys are going to bring in is going to actually demonize Bitcoin and try to convince them that ICOs are good, completely ass backwards of what it's supposed to be. So this is kind of what bothers me, is that like all of these incentives are totally misaligned here, and they're gonna go after ICOs, and they think that they will solve the ICO problem by cracking down on Bitcoin, which is the worst possible way to try to solve this problem, because Bitcoin is unregulatable, but ICOs are regulatable. You're supposed to be able to learn how to live with Bitcoin while at the same time cracking down on soliciting of other people's money, whether that solicitation is done with Bitcoin or with dollars or with gold or anything. And I just don't know if there's like maybe a few dozen people in the world that these guys can bring in to properly explain this concept to them, and the chances of them finding someone to properly explain it to them are small. I mean, Andreas Antonopoulos is maybe our best hope.
All right, well, just pushing back, there couldn't have been a bigger difference between the SEC and CFTC Senate hearings, which were extraordinarily pro-Bitcoin. Giacomo, do you share the same beliefs as Tone? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with Tone. Well, I mean, I don't like the idea of regulators cracking down stuff, because I don't think they are effective, and I don't even think that it's moral to just jump between a consulting adult business from a regulatory point of view. But I think it is indeed very, very bad that regulators are bashing Bitcoin, which is the only serious, legit, not scammy, not fraud-based project in the so-called crypto space, and maybe using a better, a softer approach with the real scams. Like you can also see that, getting back to the previous topic, now governments and banks, they like to experiment with Ethereum, which is actually an ICO, one of the first ICOs. So it's also used in order to issue and to manipulate, and to certain degrees, all these other scammy ICOs. But that's okay, because Ethereum uses a marketing which is bank friendly and regulator friendly, while the only project which sure, it is unregulatable, so it could raise concerns, legit concerns about money laundering laws and stuff like that, because because just Bitcoin is financial freedom, and financial freedom is scary for financial control freaks. But this is the only not scammy project out there, with maybe a few exceptions like Monero or something. So I totally agree with Tom. I totally agree with you that the difference with the previous hearing in the Senate with Christopher Giancarlo, it's really shocking. Like in that case, you could see regulators try to at least understand what they are trying to discuss, making a little effort to learn, maybe even joking about the hodl term and stuff like that. While now you just have people repeating total bullshit just right around the mainstream media without any kind of discrimination or connection or ability to filter out.
Right. Just to also note, I'd be curious how much.
Wait, we got a giant echo.
Oh, okay. How about now?
I don't know why. Okay.
So,
good now.
Like very often, these congressmen simply read the talking points that their staffers write. So, hopefully, also the staffers and everybody on the Hill will start reading up. Just again to note, right, pushing back again, but also on Giacomo's point, Bitcoin social media fans hailed Giancarlo and Clayton's hearing with the Senate. SEC and CFTC as a glory amid regulatory crackdowns. So obviously, everything's been in the news. We've talked about this ad nauseum about what's going on with the SEC. But I actually do see this as potentially a huge positive for Bitcoin. is an ability to crack down on these scammy ICOs. Again, what we talked about yesterday. But you know, we shall see. Again, also the title of the hearing yesterday was ICOs. So I just
right, exactly. So this is where I disagree. So I like the title of the hearing is ICOs, and there wasn't. Again, I didn't hear the video, but according to, like, I read the article, and it looks like no one was like the hearing didn't start off explaining the difference between Bitcoin and ICOs. And I think all of them there still don't know the difference, and I that scares me.
Sure. So we shall see. We shall see. Tone, moving on to price. We bounced.
All right, let's take a look at price. Was getting a little nervous last night, but let's take a look at price. We are bouncing. We're bouncing. This is good. This is good. Need more. Need a lot more. Like, this is the weekly candle. The weekly candle is actually not telling us much. The weekly candle needs to give us a higher close. The weekly candle really needs to stay above 8,300 on my chart because it needs to stay above the prior close. And with Hyperwaves and Tyler's charts, it needs to stay above 8,300. We are looking like a reversal candle. So now this is looking promising. We had a 9 buy signal yesterday, and today we're starting to bounce. I talked about a potential bounce here yesterday. Now, there's no way I was able to predict this bounce. I didn't have the onions to do that. But now that the bounce has taken place, if it closes in this vicinity, I now have a beautiful chart that where we bounced off of a double point of support between the trend line and the horizontal line. My 7,600 area held. The low yesterday was 76.65. I talked about 7,600. Now, someone could have taken a chance to buy the dip. I would have been a little bit nervous there. I'm not here to guess the bottom, even though I had my 9 the day before. But now that we have a reversal candle, if this reversal candle holds, there could definitely be an opportunity tomorrow on tomorrow's candle if we start trading higher than today's candle. So this is exactly what I want to see. But as we go up, the most likely point of contention is going to be the $10,000 area because we're going to hit the upper trend line as this thing continues to consolidate. But it was good. I'm really liking this daily candle, but the day still has almost 12 hours to go. So we'll see how that ends. I don't even care about like the 4-hour charts, but hey, the 4-hour charts gave you a nice bounce right here off a reversal candle 2 candles ago. Beautiful reversal candle known as a Dragonfly Doji. And the moment you start trading above a Dragonfly Doji, it's actually a buying opportunity on a short-term trade. So if you are a trader using 4-hour charts, your entry would have been directly above this doji, and your stop loss would have been, if we did this, 5 or 6 hours ago, this is what I would have been saying. Your stop loss would have been below the swing low. Now at this point, this was a big up day, so a big up candle. So at this point, if you did enter this perfect trade based on traditional trading rules of entry, you would now set a break-even stop loss and make sure this trade cannot cost you any money. That's how you preserve your capital. That's how you have, good risk reward. On the hourly chart, was there a tradable hourly candle? And this one is a little bit harder. As you can see, we had a 9 and then we continued to go down, and we reversed. We had our color flips, and the 2 did not go above a 1 till just now. So the hourly chart did not really give you any good entries at all. So based on an hourly chart, it would have been very difficult to time your trade. But the 4-hour chart gave you a beautiful traditional entry, and the daily chart can give you a beautiful entry as of tomorrow's candle. Usually I'm a little cavalier because in the past, if I saw this candle after a 9 going into a level of support and starting to rebound with a little bit of strength, I would have been all over it. But this actually happened at night, so I didn't see the bounce until just now. I probably would have been way more optimistic halfway up this candle around the time the 4-hour was going above the Dragonfly Doji at a price of $7,950 as it's crossing back into the $8,000 land. So this is looking promising, but even if we bounce here, my target would only be 10K and then reevaluate, even if we bounce strong. And the volume isn't really strong yet, so let's see what happens in the next 24 hours.
All right, well, hopefully it will continue upward trend, be more volume, more buyers. We'll see what happens. Giacomo, thank you so much for joining today. Again,
thank you.
Yeah, let the people know where to find you, because I have a lot of viewers now, and you're very, very new in the podcast space. So let the people know how to find you, and there you go.
Well, basically, I troll on Twitter mostly with the handler Giacomo Zucco, which is my name, Giacomo GYACOMOZUCCO, and I am also sometimes around Bitcoin conferences and stuff, but mostly I have to work. So.
And you run a blockchain incubator in Milan.
That's right. I run basically two kinds of projects. One is an open source, no profit, Bitcoin related projects incubator, which is called BHB Network, which has a different location, but mostly it is in Milan. And then there are a few consulting for profit companies that are basically giving me the money to sustain the no-profit operation, which are blockchain labs. I have one in Italy, one in Switzerland, one in Bulgaria. There are a little bit everywhere. And so it's a double Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde business. I usually sell consultancy to financial incumbents about unblockchain, so why they don't need a blockchain mostly. And I use the money to support Bitcoin-related projects.
Awesome. Well, I'm a huge fan. Thanks for all the great work, and thanks for being on the show this morning.
Thank you for inviting me. It was cool.
Everyone have a great day.
And don't forget